So, you are unique. The hard part about that is figuring out how you are unique and being able to address that effectively so that you can eat the foods that work for you. Now, one way to do that, there's actually some shortcuts to do that, but one way to do that is to use natural biofeedback. In other words, look at the outputs and how they relate to the inputs. And in regards to food, that's actually fairly simple. So let's talk about how you can do that. That's based on the concept that our responses can tell us how foods are affecting us. And that's a kind of internal biofeedback. The problem is we aren't really taught how to notice these signals. I mean, yeah, we notice things like if we get really hungry, we notice that. If we get really tired, we notice that. But we aren't taught how to connect what we last ate in a meal with how we are feeling in those ways. And so what I'd like to do is help you make that connection today by watching this video. The truth is that your body will never lie to you. The key is figuring out what it's saying, and that's going to make you very knowledgeable about how foods affect you and allow you to start improving your health and actually reducing your chances of being ill simply by choosing the right foods. So there's three basic areas to notice when you're looking at that. First of all, you want to pay attention to how you feel 1 to 2 hours after you eat a meal. And that could even be eating a snack, but especially your main meals of the day, your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner. Okay? So the three areas are satisfaction and food cravings. And in other words, if you finish your meal and an hour later you are standing in front of the cupboard with the door open, wondering what there is to eat, something about that last meal wasn't right for you. It wasn't the right balance of fats or proteins or carbohydrates, or maybe it wasn't the right particular foods for you. Maybe they were too processed. There could be any of a number of things, but you know at least from that your meal wasn't right because your body is saying, no, I didn't get what I needed, I need more. And of course, what do we all reach for? We all reach for, comfort foods, and those tend not to be that good for you anyway. So if you feel adequately full, you feel kind of restored in terms of your appetite is satisfied, then that was a good meal for you. If you have cravings of foods, if you are still hungry, if you feel full but you're still looking for food, and that sort of thing, well, that's a signal that maybe that meal wasn't your optimal meal. Another signal would be your physical symptoms and energy level. Energy level is sort of an easy one. You can tell whether you have kind of a restored, natural, healthy sense of energy. And you can also feel it if you don't. If you are like hyper and bouncing off the walls, or even more common is probably the feeling of just crashing, just wondering how you can even keep your eyes open. And a lot of people have that one, especially in the afternoon sometimes. Well, the key to that is to say, well, now what did I eat at that last meal that might have been having this effect on me? When you can spot that, it's very powerful. Very, very powerful, and you can actually adjust how you're eating in a way that gives you a sustained, ongoing, revitalized kind of sense of energy after a meal. Another thing you can look for is physical symptoms, and this is going to be very unique for each person, so I'm not going to pretend to be able to tell you what symptoms you should look for, but I have worked with a number of patients who, for example, have a symptom of pain, like inflammatory responses happening in their body that increase when they eat the wrong foods. So if you notice anything like that an hour or two after you eat, you might see if there's a connection with what you have eaten at that past meal and that pain. And the way you do that is the next time you eat a meal, you eat something different. If the pain does not increase after that, well, bingo, you've spotted something in the previous meal that was a problem, and in the latest meal you've corrected that because the pain did not increase, or maybe even it went down. Another area where people don't often make the connection between how foods affect them and how they are feeling is their mental clarity and what I call their emotional resilience. In other words, are they rolling with the punches? Are they thinking clearly? Are they remembering things well? Or are they fuzzy-headed? Are they anxious or depressed? or they hyper the song they can't get out of their head, that kind of thing. If any of that kind of stuff is going on, then you know that something in that meal that you last ate was not right for you. It was an imbalance in maybe your proteins or your fats or your carbohydrates in the ratios, or maybe it was the wrong kind of foods for you. But it gives you a chance to look back on that and see if you can determine what those foods were. Okay. Now, as I mentioned before, there are shortcuts to this sort of thing. And the biggest shortcut, the best shortcut I know of, is something called metabolic typing. And metabolic typing is a way to determine, with a fair degree of accuracy, how foods are going to affect your health and your experience of quality of life. And so if you can dial in the foods using metabolic typing, really you can cut a year or two off your learning curve from figuring out how those foods are affecting you, and start feeling better much, much quicker. Now, the process I just went through with you of paying attention to your body's natural biofeedback is actually very powerful, and it's actually part of metabolic typing. But if you only do that, if you don't do the metabolic typing, what will happen is you'll just need to keep paying attention over a period of time so that you can figure out exactly how those foods are affecting you with some kind of consistency. It can be done. Now, food, of course, isn't the only factor. We talked about black box medicine, and there were 9 different inputs we talked about, and only one of them was food. And I guess we could put drinks in there, water and so forth, as another input. So that still leaves 7 that aren't accounted for. But some of them are going to be more immediate and important than others, and some of them are going to be more controllable than others. So I'm calling those other factors. And those are things like what they call blocking factors. That would be exposure to toxic heavy metals or other toxic pesticides, that kind of thing. Or perhaps electromagnetic spectrum kinds of blocking factors. That could be an issue. And of course, if your body has had to be adapting over time for a long period of time, then that could be things like adrenal fatigue. Your adrenals could just be tired. And if your adrenals are tired, since they're really the core of your ability to balance your life and to adapt to things, you don't adapt as well. So that's when symptoms can start creeping up. And of course, if you're not digesting your food efficiently, well, that's going to mean that no matter how good the food is that you eat, you're not going to make the best use out of it. So that can be an issue, especially as we get older. Your ability to detoxify. The body has waste products from metabolism that it has to get rid of. It gets rid of them through the skin, through the lungs, through the kidneys, through the intestines, and through the lymph glands. And if the kidneys and the liver especially are involved in that process of sorting out those toxic things and getting rid of them, if any of those processes are not being efficient, well, then there's a backup of toxicity, which puts another stress on the body, and that's going to be a factor in terms of how well you feel. And your immune strength also, very important, because you've got to fight stuff off. You've got to be able to withstand exposure to things like viruses and bacteria and that kind of stuff and just bounce back from it. And if that's not happening, you need to do things to strengthen your immune system. So all of these things are important other factors in addition to food that may need to be addressed if you want to achieve optimal health. But truly, food is fuel. The food that you eat is going to have a huge, huge impact on everything else in your experience. And so getting the right food, getting the right fuel into your body is going to be crucial for having optimal health and for having freedom from disease. So if you want to cut to the chase, I recommend metabolic typing. I do that with my patients, and that's something that can be done both in person and by email and by phone. You can reach me through my website, RenoAlternativeMedicine.com, if you'd like to do that. And if you want to work with somebody in person and you're not in the northern Nevada area, well, I may be able to refer you to somebody in your area who does that. All right, thanks for watching. Take care.